All right, I'll call to order the meeting of the Fayetteville Telecommunication Board for June 19th, 2014, and call the roll. Mr. Baldwin, Mr. Ehrig.
Here.
Ms. English had sent a note that she's ill today. Mr. Huggins.
Here.
Ms. McCormick.
Here.
Mr. Seaton has notified us he will not be able to attend today, and Smith is here. So the chair recognizes a quorum, and we'll go ahead and get started and hope that Mr. Baldwin will join us before then. Has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes from the May meeting?
Yes.
Are there any additions or corrections to those? They're always so thorough. It takes longer to read them than it does for having a meeting. You do a very good job on this. So I'll entertain a motion, or without objection, notice that the minutes are approved from the May meeting.
A motion to approve.
Okay.
I second that
Second.
motion.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let it be noted that it passed unanimously. Are there any additions? We have a fairly interesting agenda this time. Hey, all right.
Hello. Hello. How's everybody?
Good. Good. Let the record reflect that Mr. Baldwin is here and just answered roll.
Hey, I'm here.
Retroactively. All right. Are there any additions to the agenda for this evening's meeting? All right, entertain a motion to approve it.
A motion to approve. Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are now in the work, and Fritz, if you'll begin with the report.
I'll be glad to.
Am I on your way? I do need to move, but not for you.
So, May numbers, interesting, always interesting, in different ways. But anyway, getting right to it. Viewership numbers for video on demand, total of 706 views on Granicus. As you can see, actually this month, all top 10 were archives. None of the live viewing hit the top 10, although there was some live viewing. I would imagine that had to do with just, summer schedules and things like that, people being really busy in May, especially with school getting out and things like that. And our May meeting of the Telecommunications Board was very well viewed. 31 archive views of that meeting. So, and a lot of interest in the May 6th City Council meeting. The, again, just for your information and just from a sense of interest, where are they coming from to the site? From accessfayetteville.org primarily, and then some direct. And then, again, a little heat map that kind of shows you where the map didn't resolve on this screen grab, but Fayetteville, of course, is the top of the list for the top 10 places where people are coming from. And, sprinkling around, we got some Atlanta, Little Rock, I think that's a Bryan, and I would think that might be Texas, but anyway, it's an interesting view of that. This is the YouTube summary. 1,212 views for a total of almost 2,700 minutes watched on YouTube in the month of May. Top 10, again, Today in America, we always have that one up there, but if you cut that one off, you can see a lot of the trail, interest in the trails. Fayetteville Alert System video was viewed quite a bit because it got linked a lot, and then as you can see, like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 10 were actually about trails, which indicates to me that we may need to produce some new ones because those were actually, they're actually a couple years old in terms of the video tours of the trails, and we have some better technology in terms of video recording, and should probably reproduce those now if the weather's nice. The demographics associated with this, Google Analytics had a little bit of difficulty with some of this, so the male and the female say NA. They had a notification that said that they were having a little bit of trouble with some of their overall analytics in terms of some of these percentages, but I think this gives you a really good idea of where people are coming from and where people are watching. I think that little blue dot that is over there to the lower left of the United States might be Hawaii. So somebody might be watching from Hawaii. In terms of the raw numbers, this gives you an overview of the totals with the 706 and the 1212 of the YouTube. Up a little bit from April, which is always nice to see. It doesn't compete with January, but again, May is one of those weird months where you have things, and Dan will talk to you a little bit more about some of the success of their efforts in terms of keeping May from being such a low month for public access. And a little bit higher this year, 2014, you can see we had a total of 1,918 views of various programming, and in 2013 it was just over 1,800, so a little bit of an increase, which is good to see. And I'm really going to be interested to see how this tracks throughout the year in terms of what it was last year. This is the first year I've done a year-on-year comparison on the video on-demand viewership. No significant changes in terms of the operations down at the television center. We're working on a few projects, technical projects, but other than that, nothing significant, no complaints. Everything just continues to tool along. One thing did happen this week. We did get, IT was finally able to get the time to run some of the fiber optic lines that we needed to run, and room 111, the meeting room that's 2 floors below this one, will come online with a remote system like we have here in 326. Will come online next week, so we will not have to have a staff member hauling camera to that room anymore to record meetings, and it'll be just like this room. Any questions about government channel television center operations for the month of May?
You mentioned the trails, updating that video. Was that something that you would do, or the Parks Department?
We'll do that.
Okay.
We'll get out there and work with them. Matt Mihailovich is the trails coordinator for the city of Fayetteville. He actually works for Development Services Department in the engineering division. However, his total duty, his total focus is trail development and construction. He's a real great resource for us to go out there. But yeah, we'll produce those. And,
Got a lot of new trails too.
Yeah.
and we have new trails to put on there. That's a good point. One of the videos that you saw on the list was the Clear Creek Trail ribbon cutting. That one just opened recently, and then we have more trails in the south side of town that need to have tours done of the video tours done of them. I think you'll see a lot of viewership of those when we get those posted.
Out of curiosity, why was January such a spike on one of those graphs you showed versus?
It's going to be, we have a hard time speculating why those things spike. Every once in a while you'll see something like in this month, there was quite a interest in a particular city council meeting.
Okay.
So there could be a controversial subject going on to where you'll have a real bump in viewership because people want to use them. The other thing I'm anticipating that we may see in later this year are people going back and watching meetings because we have an election coming up in the fall, and you'll see more viewership of people going back and watching historical. Yes, I did actually say this. I did not say that. But they do that, and they use that, which is great. I mean, it's a great resource for the citizens to be able to do their research as well when they're looking at candidates and people that are in meetings and serve on boards and commissions as well. Anything else? Ready to hear from Dan?
Yeah, thank you very much. Dan, on public access?
Yes.
Oh, it's off. Yeah,
The clicker
There we go.
Thank you. Ta-da, ta-da. All right, May was a great month for public access, and with 17 class participations, we had great educational flow, and that was monumental. Well, I'll talk about more here in a moment when we get to the training section. Historically, May is a very low month because of the cyclical nature of the university. We usually have very low attendance, but we, with the data that we had collected, we were able to have some concerted efforts to help keep the class attendance higher, so we were very excited about that. We also had great growth in our social media outreach this last month, and we're still seeing a dramatic increase of inside programming telecasts from previous years in general, but specifically last year, and that's programs that are produced at the television center. So we're very excited about that. So like I was saying earlier, with the data we collected, it was very clear that with 11 participations in 2012 and 8 participations in 2013, the next one should be 2014, we were able to know that this was coming. So as of February, I started outreach so that people would be specifically aware of what we were doing, and then in May, we would be able to reach out to people that we had not spoken to before, and just really had concerted outreach efforts so that we would be able to maintain our numbers. And so this past month, we were able to keep our attendance up on our class participation. We also had our first taker so far on our advanced studio program. Because we have broken it out into individual disciplines, we had an audio specialist from the community come in and get oriented on our equipment, but he was already very qualified, so we were able to test him out. And then he came just this last week and ran audio for us on later with Jason Sewell. And so it was really nice to have the advanced course broken out for that specific purpose, to be able to get him streamlined through the class, and then he instantly became an asset for local productions, which was really nice to see that effectively, work in action. So, so then we also had 4 advanced editing participations, which is much higher advanced participation than we've seen previously. So we have more and more people who are taking the beginning level classes and then very interested in pursuing the additional continuing education that we offer. So we're very proud of the training program. We have people come in the doors practically every day who are interested in it, who have heard about it, and then being able to be in the community personally and let people know what we offer, it's always a wow. It's like, wow, do you guys really do that? And the answer is yes. So it is really wonderful to have the opportunity to share this resource with the community. As far as certification activity went, we had 5 candidate producers, which was that's right on par with our normal number. So accomplishing that in May was pretty historical. And then as far as production activity goes, we still continued to have great production schedules on our new programs. We've got new episodes of programs coming out, and we're continuing to utilize trained volunteers to produce those in addition to the Your Media staff. So it's really nice to be able to incorporate previous students in these programs that are exciting and happening monthly. With equipment utilization, we did see the May dip take some impact, especially when it came to field camera uses. We did not have people checking out cameras like we normally do, but we did have a wonderful new group of students, so we do anticipate seeing those numbers head back up like they very often do, and it just ebbs and flows. Like Fritz said, very often we'll have someone come in who's working on a project and they'll work really hard, like you see that spike in March. All of a sudden we'll have someone checking out cameras like crazy, and then they'll be in the editing bay, and then we'll have an editing spike. So it really kind of reflects the different things that people are working on at that time. May marks 29 months without a formal complaint. I think we're practically getting to the point where we might want to stop counting and just say we haven't had any. It's been really wonderful to be able to offer these services to people and have a great response from the community. As far as our programming goes, we can see that we're pretty much keeping up with our normal numbers, but we do have this wonderful, when you look at total inside programs, where last year we were at 238. This year, where's the figure for the zapper here?
Just a little yellow green line.
Green. There it is. So you can see the 238 has become 395 as we are turning our focus more to making it so that the content on the channel is locally focused. So it's just really exciting to have more local shows in production and be able to have the focus be on our inside programming. As you can see, with May, we had our kind of standard bump when it comes to show releases. So we now are establishing a new pattern, and it's very interesting to watch this pattern. March did have the benefit of lots of shows being announced and premiered, and then since then we've had really nice waves there that come with the premieres of those shows. So we're holding pretty steady at a 250-ish a month live stream visits average. As far as promotional activity goes, we were very excited last month to report that we were close to a benchmark of 400, and we broke over that while we were in this meeting, actually. And then because of our continued outreach, we added another 100 in this last month. So we continue to have a wider reach when it comes to social networking, which is our primary way of reaching out to organizations and individuals who might be interested in taking advantage of what we have to offer. So we're very excited to have that success. And then Fritz and I have continued our preliminary strategies and plan of action on when we are able to access the FPAT Trust account funds. Is there a word on when we might be able to, do we know about that, Fritz?
I plan to take that to the City Council on July 1st.
So, and with their approval, then we've got the green light?
Yep.
And that's when we will make pens, because we have pens just walk out the door all the time. So we are going to have Fayetteville Public Access Television pens.
Pens are great.
So that they will be able to do that. And then we're looking at some T-shirt options to incentivize people coming. When people come and get trained, it would be cool to have them have a T-shirt that indicates that they've been trained at Fayetteville Public Access Television. I still see T-shirts from way back in the day that were made, so I think that T-shirts will be a good route. And then thumb drives. We're going to have Fayetteville Public Access Television thumb drives that will already have paperwork and orientation information on them. So we've got the plan pretty much laid out. We're just ready for the funds, and very curious to see what kind of impact that'll have on community awareness. Here you can see our steady growth in Facebook likes. And then here's the analytics on the month of May. So we had a specific premiere kind of in the middle of the month there that was our biggest spike. And it's really small there, but when we look at the cities, I think it's fascinating that on the top of the government channel viewing list was Tuttle as well, was in the top 5. And Tuttle is in the top 5 of our viewers as well. We've got 236 from Fayetteville, and then next is Bentonville, and then next is Tuttle. And then Springdale, Oklahoma City, Rogers, and then we have people watching in Nashville, New York, and Los Angeles. So it's just really exciting to have the opportunity to reach a nationwide audience through the internet, whereas before our reach was much smaller. So in conclusion, I would say we had a successful month and that we escaped the May lull for the first time in our recorded history, and our studio use is up and continuing to grow, as well as our social media outreach. And as always, we are working to improve our services and the resources provided. So, any questions?
With the trust, is there something we should contact the city council members about? On Ward 4 has a monthly meeting, Is there something we should say to them or encourage them?
There's never been any issue with this. Basically, because it requires us to do a change in the budget.
Okay.
The way this will happen, the way this will work is that the money that your media collects for things like blank media sales, recording media, DVDs, duplications, things like that, and some of the production stuff that they've done, goes into a trust account. That gets collected, and then on a regular basis, we go to the city council. But because that money didn't exist when I did the budgets for the media services division, I can't put it in the budget. So when we do get the money in, what I have to do is go to the council and say, okay, we have this money. It's like a donation, and we bring it in like a donation for the animal shelter or something like that. And this is the standard process that the city follows. So Dan writes a check, we put it into the city's bank account, then I have to fill out all this paperwork and then go to the council and say, we have this money, we want to realize the revenue, and we want to we want you to please approve a budget adjustment because it wasn't budgeted, but now we have it. We have to increase our budget to realize the revenue, then the revenue goes into that account, and then we can spend it. And the city council is always really, really good about saying, oh, someone wants to give us money? Sure, we'll be glad to take it. So I don't have any apprehension there'll be any issues with that, but thanks for asking for that.
Any other questions for Dan? Fritz, I had one question, should have asked earlier. Do you ever get any archive views of the Quorum Court, Washington County Quorum Court meetings?
We do, but I will do a specific search on those and can get those numbers for you.
No,
I just look at the
I was
top
just curious.
10.
I've never seen them on there, and
I haven't specifically looked at those, but I pull the top 10 just for the report, and I can certainly go back and...
are they available on demand as well?
Yeah, we have them on Granicus, on the Access Fayetteville, just like all the other meetings that we do.
Are they on the county's website, do you know?
I don't think so. I don't think they've linked to them. There was a question that was asked, I think it was early in 13. One of the people over at the county contacted me and to get information on what it would require for us to expand our coverage. They were asking for expanded coverage of their subcommittees or their committees of the Quorum Court and such. And I gave them some numbers about staffing and some things like that, and I guess they decided not to pursue it from a cost perspective.
But the Cox carries the channel outside of Fayetteville city limits, so that people in the county that want to watch the Quorum Court can...
Yes, sir. Cox carries the government channel outside the city limits.
Okay.
So yeah, it would be available for them. And so does AT&T.
The city council acted on our suggestion this week. Can you give us an update on where that is?
Last week I appeared before the city council in their agenda session and explained to them what the proposed resolution was, and I just had distributed that to all of you so you can read it. They were very supportive and very appreciative that the telecom board brought it to them early enough that they could act on it and it could be transmitted to the appropriate parties, the Federal Communications Commission, while we're still within the comment period. And it was left on the consent agenda, so on Tuesday evening prior to this week, it was on the consent agenda and it wasn't discussed in the city council meeting itself.
So, but it has been passed with an 8-0 vote.
It was passed unanimously, and as soon as the city clerk gives me the certified copy with the resolution number and the attestation signatures and the mayor's signature on it, I'll make a PDF copy of that, and I will submit it to the Federal Communications Commission.
Okay. You might I'm glad to hear that. You might also send it to our congressional representatives. I saw today, I haven't read the article, but I saw some notice that legislation has been introduced that would block the fast lane, so you might at least let our congressman and our 2 senators know the position on that.
Will do.
Just as a courtesy on the copy of it. Thank you very much for getting that through and following up on it. The next thing on the agenda is with regard to the franchise fees that are collected from the cable companies by the city. We do not get much information from them with regard to what people are watching or whether they're watching any of the access channels, but they do have to pay, was it quarterly they remit for right-of-way franchise fees, and it's based upon customers and services and income, and I'd asked Fritz to put that together for our information to see if we could pick up on any trends in cable viewership. Or, I mean, it's hard to tell because, you know, if they raise the prices and lose customers, it still might show an increase, but at least give us some idea of what's happening to the franchise fees, especially since they've now abandoned their franchise agreement with the city of Fayetteville and have registered through the Secretary of State's office, and just to see what's happening on that. Can you summarize that in any way? Or?
Certainly. Just so the public is clear on how this is collected, what these numbers are based upon, and as Dr. Smith just said, prior to this year, local municipalities had a franchise agreement with cable companies and cable operators within their jurisdictions, and they set, through that agreement, they said whatever franchise fee was required based on their negotiations with the cable company. That essentially allowed the cable company to have a monopoly within the municipality or the political subdivision. And the franchise fee was in payment for both that agreement and for the use of the rights-of-way, the public rights-of-way, for them to run their cables. That has been the traditional model since the early 80s when cables first started coming around, late 70s, early 80s. That was the model. And this is just a little backstory and a little history. Several years ago, many of the large cable companies, Comcast, Time Warner, Cox among them, started some very strong efforts to change the rules under which they operated, and is generally what we called it was statewide franchising. It's kind of a misnomer. They don't, in Arkansas, they got that law passed this last year. It went into effect this last year, and it's not really a franchise. They don't have a franchise to provide this. All they have to do is register with the Secretary of State's office and say, here's the map that we're going to provide service in Fayetteville, which they do. So while we call it franchise fees, in the law it's referenced as a service fee, a video service fee to the municipality, ostensibly to pay for their use of our rights-of-way. We don't get to say whether they use them or not. In that law, it says we, as a city, we must provide them access to the rights-of-way. So, in compensation for that, the law says that they will pay a certain amount. In our case, in the City of Fayetteville's case, it's 5% of their gross revenue of the video services. That doesn't count the telephone service that they provide, and it doesn't count the internet service they provide.
I don't think it also doesn't count Netflix or whatever else that might be carried through there.
That would be internet service. That would be through their internet service. So, and that's where things get kind of gray, and people, there's a lot of confusion there, because if I'm watching, I can watch Netflix on my TV at home using my Cox Internet service, it's not going from the video services. I'm not accessing it through Cox Video Services, I'm accessing it through the Internet service. So, what you'll see on your bill, if you're a Cox customer in Fayetteville, is you'll see it broken out. They have the video, they have the Internet, and they have the telephone. Under the video, in that whole list of stuff, they'll have the 5% service fee. That 5% service fee is actually passed on to the customers. Cox doesn't pay it, it's passed through, like sales tax, only it's their fee. So, again, the company's not paying the 5%. The subscribers are paying the 5%. But that's how that's implemented here in Fayetteville and in the state of Arkansas now, totally in the state of Arkansas. The fees that were collected, I distributed in the packet that I gave everybody, that I sent out to everybody, I gave you a breakdown of the fees that have been collected from the two video service providers in Fayetteville, Cox Cable and AT&T. And as we had in there, Cox Cable in 2013 remitted $787,143 to the city of Fayetteville for video services at 5%. I did the math on that. $787,143 is 5% of $15,742,860. That's how much Cox Communications, that was their gross revenue in the year 2013 for video services alone. Now I can tell you on my bill, the internet service is probably about half of it. And you say, well, one of the things we wanted to discuss was subscriber levels, and it's, again, really difficult to speculate because I've known people that had, just for their cable bill, they had $350 cable bills. You know, yours may be less than 100. So it's really difficult just by looking at these numbers to say how many subscribers there were. Now, the other question or the other statement that you made just a minute ago is to look at the trend. In 2011, the total collections were just over $761,000. It went up about $20,000, or just under $23,000. To 2012 was just under $782,000, and then in 2013, it was $787 and some change. Year to date, 2014, they've collected $426,404. And looking at the previous years, I can tell you that the quarters seem to be fairly consistent across the quarters. So I'm not seeing that the first and second quarter of 2014 is going to be a big spike over the second two quarters. So it looks like they're on track to have another fairly significant increase in their revenue.
Yeah. Well, the thing that it reflects that their revenues are doing just fine. What we can't break out of that are assumptions or conclusions that, with regard to how many subscribers they have, because they could, raise prices and lose subscribers,
right,
and still show a revenue gain. So there's no way to track, I guess, how many subscribers they have, but at least it's not showing up. If people are unplugging, it's not showing up in the revenue streams.
Doesn't seem to be.
So I assume they're both healthy, and neither one of them are followed up here.
Doesn't appear to.
As a point of interest, my Cox bill went up $16 a month.
They did have a rate increase recently.
Yes, they did.
Well, they don't have to file those with the city. I don't believe they have to file them with anyone, do they?
No, sir.
But I think that's your indicator that people are unplugging. Because it seems like the revenue, it's growing slowly, but it seems like the differences are kind of minimal. But we know for a fact that more and more people are getting more content from the web and not from the actual cable source.
Is the revenue growing because they're raising rates, or is the revenue growing because they're having some growth in subscribers?
Yep.
And they could also, at any time, the way the law is written now is, if Cox wants to add a section, so to speak, to provide service to, all they have to do is redraw their map and send it to the Secretary of State and say, this, now we're redrawing our map. So they could pull in another area. That would be an increase in their subscriber base, increase their revenue, if that's the direction they wanted to go.
Well, they can cut out people and just
And they can
decide
cut out.
not to serve.
The only restriction to that is that the line has to be contiguous. It has to be a contiguous area. Nothing that says it can't have some really strange spike that goes way over here.
One up one street.
It comes back down. But they can't make like little pockets within the city. So that's there.
Any other questions on that, or? I think that's about as much detail we'll be able to get is just what their payments are. They're not gonna tell us how many subscribers they have.
They don't have to report that anywhere?
They're not a publicly traded company.
The 5% pass-through is interesting. Not only do we pay for the service, we pay for the right to watch
The
TV.
right away. Yeah, to get your cable there.
That does, and that goes back, that was a long-standing thing. That goes back many, many years, to the early days of when cable companies were negotiating their agreements with municipalities, and that just stayed in as time has gone on. The real question is whether the federal legislature is going to step in and require that cable companies be treated as telecommunications utilities under Title II of the Telecommunications Act, which will totally change the face of the whole issue if that occurs. And I don't know, that would be an interesting thing to look at as to what kind of impact that will have on some of these state laws that have been passed recently.
Is there any reason why Fayetteville couldn't run its own television and internet company?
Yes, sir, there is. State law prohibits it.
Does it really?
Yes, sir.
Unless we have an electric utility, and then we could. But
Unless we have a what?
if we have an electric utility, then we could. Conway and Paragould both have their own cable systems.
Mm-hmm.
And a number of, Bentonville has its own electric company, so they could do their own cable if they so chose. Fayetteville does not, at this time, have an electrical utility operation. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, the next thing on the agenda, I just wanted to bring this to your attention really for information purposes, is a copy of Act 1050 of 2011. This bill was introduced and strongly supported by the telecom industry. It passed the House 88 to nothing and the Senate 35 to nothing, so it went from the first committee action to the governor's desk in a week. What it does is it prohibits public school districts from being able to access the broadband service network that are used by the universities. So they're required, they can't buy in and participate in that. They have to use a private ISP. So I contacted our local legislators and asked them what, I told them it was not apparent to me, and maybe I was just slow, but it appeared that the only reason you would have that would be to force them to use a private ISP. And one of the arguments, I believe Senator Lindsay replied to this, that someone had mentioned that, well, this would keep the public schools from sucking up all the bandwidth for the universities. So that was, as far as I could tell, was the only positive argument in favor of this. But there wasn't any discussion. Apparently, there wasn't any citizen input. But someone was inclined to draft it, and have it introduced, and pass it very quickly. There's a lot of discussion now. The governor has a statewide task force that has recommended that this be repealed, and especially to help the rural school districts have access to high-speed internet services for their students. I don't think there's any reason that we need to act on it or make a recommendation to City Council at this point, because it may or may not be included if there's a special session called that we'd want to make a recommendation on it. I contacted Susan Norton, the Director of Information for the school district, and asked her if they had done any studies or analysis or what it would cost, the difference, and said that they had not done any analysis on it yet, and it just wasn't available, so there wasn't any reason to conduct a study since it had been prohibited. If it became available, I think the school district would look at the options, or at least have the option of buying into the statewide network. I think it's called ARE 1, is that right? ARE on. There is an organization that's been formed, actually as a 501c4 organization they don't lobby, they educate the public on the issue and educate the public on how they could contact their legislators and get it changed. So I think there's a large public group forming to try to get repeal. I think it's safe to say that Cox and AT&T are not in that group, and will probably work to make sure it doesn't get repealed, since it's been at them. I don't know that, I mean, it is a telecom issue that we might advise the council on if we have. And the impact is probably more on rural school districts than on Fayetteville. But just an issue I wanted to bring to your attention. So there's a copy of the governor's press release in there, and a copy of the act as it has before. So it may be something in the future we want to take a position on. I'll keep sort of following the discussions and see what's going on, and pass along anything I hear on it. You may know more about it than I do.
I think just from a technological standpoint, schools and especially elementaries, middle schools are moving toward more technological learning. You have, when I was a kid, and in elementary and middle school, a computer was a very strange and foreign thing. And I think that it's important now that kids are learning on tablets, and they have access to those things almost more than books sometimes in the classroom, that in order to keep up with city schools, that it would be an important issue for especially rural schools.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see the public policy reason why you would prohibit them from tapping into this high-speed and effective and possibly less costly resource for our public schools that are not really overfunded anyways. Anyway, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I don't know if I have any recommendation for any action at this time.
A word.
It'll be January before the legislature meets in regular session.
A word here on this. Sometime back, I was a substitute teacher at Fayetteville schools, and I went to computer lab with the third graders and was absolutely impressed with the computer learning, the lessons that were done on a computer. My stand on this is, if broadband will benefit the schools, I want them to have it. I absolutely do. I think that's where the future of our education is. In the rapid accessing of knowledge, I don't think we can beat it. I think it's the way to go.
Oh, and it's
And anything that restricts that, I don't like it.
It's absolutely a necessary skill anymore,
Yes.
and learning.
Well, I would say, and just want to compliment the wonderful job that the Fayetteville schools do with technology, and they get, recognized nationally for their digital education work. But it may be something that they could save money on, if they could tie into the university's network. Anyway, just keep that in mind, I suppose, or if you have any reason to move on it, I'll accept the motion, but I don't know that it would do any good just yet. But the regular, and it probably won't, there may be a special session, but it'll have to be included specifically in this, but it's quite likely to come up in January, so we may want to follow the public debate and see. I mean, there may be reasons for it. They're just not apparent to me, other than enriching the AISPs by prohibiting schools from taking advantage of the educational network. Okay. Any committee reports? I'm not aware that we have any active committees at this time, or subcommittees. You haven't been filming any of them, have you?
I'm not studying, sir.
All right. I do want to make the announcement. I believe that we elect officers in August. Is that? That's correct. That's correct. So I'm not going to be here in July, so I want to go ahead and make this announcement now. I will not be a candidate for chair again. A couple months ago, I guess it was August or September, actually, Alderman Della Gray had a resolution that would exempt the nominating committees from being filmed by the government channel. And I contacted her and told her that I didn't understand the public policy points behind that, but that I intended to speak against it as a private citizen, that the board itself hadn't taken a position on it, but I would be speaking as a private citizen to continue the filming and telecasting of the nominating committee. And I spoke. And then subsequent to that, I was informed by her that she had no trust in my judgment after my testimony. So I think if I were to continue as the chair and there was any reason to appear, it would be a negative for our committee for me to be testifying on behalf of this committee. So I think I should step down as chair and ask you to give some thought to someone else who would have the confidence of the council. So, if anybody's interested in running, you've got time to print up yard signs and bumper stickers.
Yes.
All right. So we will have your vice chair, right? And will we take nominations in July and then elections in August, or is it sort of a wham-bam?
Actually, the way it's been done in the past, and of course the board's certainly welcome to change however it wants to conduct this, but the way it's been done in the past is it's been a fairly informal process. It's done at the same meeting in August, nomination.
Okay, well then give some thought to that. And if you're interested, I guess we can't talk to each other about it, but under the Freedom of Information Act, but blink once. Anyway, give some thought if you're interested in serving as chair or vice chair of the board. Okay, that's all I have on the agenda. Are there any announcements, other announcements? Or?
I have a couple of things,
okay.
Sir.
Good.
A little late in coming, but the city of Fayetteville likes to recognize its volunteer citizens who serve on their boards and commissions, and as a small token of our appreciation, we do like to provide you with a certificate suitable for framing today.
No T-shirts or
most enjoyed. Not yet. Not yet.
We'll get you those.
Don't forget, Dan, when we do have when we do get those done.
Yeah.
I've already got mine.
You might get those pens microchipped down at the animal shelter.
I took the liberty of doing a real quick search in the Granicus records. In the 6 months the 6 months ending May 31st, the Washington County Quorum Court archives were viewed 5 times. In the last 18 days, the Washington County Quorum Court meeting of May 15th was viewed 17 times. Don't really follow county politics, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to tell you why there's so much interest in last week's Quorum Court meeting, or last month's Quorum Court meeting, should say. But there it is. So,
Okay.
give you an answer on where that...
Thank you very much. I just, had never seen it in the top 10, and I didn't know if...
It keeps going at this rate, it may make the top.
Right,
10.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Any other announcements? Congratulations to all of our new members who have
Yeah.
correctly formatted certificates, and appreciate your service very much. All right. If there's no other business, I'll declare us
Motion to
adjourned.
adjourn.
Adjourn. Non-debatable motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned until July.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I hate to see you leave.
Well, I'll be here. I just won't be sitting listening to the table.
Oh,
Usually around 9 minutes for the beginner class.
We'll expect
And what time do you offer?
input.
Well,
If you go to the
I'll
website-
always run my mouth. I just didn't want,
One week,
Alderman Gray's
the next week, and then alternate.